little light at the back. I panicked. I was like, oh no, the light. It's on now. It's fine. You can relax. Sorry, Stacey. Thanks for joining us here on Backchannel. I'm Anthony. Carla's in London. I'm in Los Angeles, and the light is just about in the right place. We've got lots to talk about today because lots of things have happened, and we like to talk about the things that have happened. If it hasn't happened, we won't be talking about it. But if it has happened, then we're going to talk about it because this is the show where things happen. If you want to get in touch and contribute to our conversation, you're welcome at any time. All views are welcome. We're not any particular views. Just whatever you want to say, of course, as long as it's coherent. Then you can wake up your Echo show, say the word "say," then your message comes through to me. You can also communicate via backchannel.tv. It's a web browser. Just type into your web browser backchannel.tv. And finally on YouTube, the show can be followed there. You can watch the show, comment on the show. Easy peasy. Lots to talk about. So, subject-wise, we are firstly going to talk about Amir Locke. No criminal charges are being brought against the Minneapolis police officer who executed the 22-year-old man in an apartment during a no-knock raid. The officers have arrested two men who spent thousands of dollars seeking to influence Secret Service agents, and over the next 5 years, 3 new heavy-lift rockets will put thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit as part of Amazon's Project Queep, like Elon Musk's Starlink. I don't know why it's called Queep. Users will be able to connect to the internet via a terminal that communicates with the satellites. Amazon says the experience in shipping and making products like Echo and Kindle will be useful in producing and distributing these. There you go. And also on this day, in 1961, JFK lobbied Congress to help save historic sites in Egypt. Wonder how that's going. So that's something to think about, talk about. We're going to look at all of those subjects. But first, we're going to jump into the morning papers. Oh, No Name has joined us. Hello, No Name. Welcome. We're going to go to the Connecticut Post first. That is from the area of Connecticut. They lead with lawmakers' eye new tax break. This says credit would help states' low and middle income families with children. The legislature's Finance Committee took the first step on Tuesday toward creating a new state income credit tax for low and middle income families with children. The Democrat-controlled panel, obviously, would endorse the bill that would immediately create a new $600 per year child credit. I mean, this is a Democrat, legislature. The thing I don't understand about people that are conservatives, if you're a conservative, do you not want a child tax credit? Because the Republicans don't advocate for child tax credits. They want to do away with all that stuff. Do you not want a child tax credit to pay less tax because you have a child, so therefore you get a rebate? Does that not interest you? Maybe conservatives hate children. I mean, maybe that's part of the deal. I don't know. It's going to be a sensitive. Yeah, kids should earn their tax credits. You want to get a tax credit, kid? You wash that car. You climb that chimney. It's going to be sensitive to a lot of people. Neighborhood changes may shake up Bridgeport politics. They say nearly 4,500 resident bump in the city's population will have a ripple effect on city council representation and political territory. This is as a result of the 2020 census. The all-Democrat council, per the municipal charter, has begun a redistricting process that will impact the borders of several of that legislative body's 10 neighborhood districts. Each district or ward has 2 members, and it may get controversial given how possessive some local lawmakers are of the neighborhoods that they serve. Yeah, I don't really get this stuff. I mean, I read about it all the time, and I announce it a lot, but I don't really understand it very much, I mean, I understand conceptually what it is, but in terms of, being there and the culture of that, don't quite understand. I decided to become a police officer when I was in high school. I was always interested in solving crimes, investigating after watching TV shows. This is from a young policewoman, Patricia Nelson. The headline is, Milford hires its first black woman police officer. First. First. Patricia Nelson has long known she wanted to be a police officer. Now she's living her dream. Nelson joined the Milford Police last year, completed her academy training, then hit the streets in November. In realizing her dream, Nelson became the first black woman to become a police officer in Milford. I decided to become a police officer when I was in high school. She said I was interested in solving crimes and investigating after watching TV shows. She said she was honored to be part of the Milford Police Department and grateful that Chief Keith Mello had enough faith in her abilities to bring her on board. I'm very honored to have this position, this job, and that the chief decided to hire me. It shows that Milford is moving in the right direction, and they are diversifying. They are reflecting the community and the transient community, because we have people who come to Milford from different towns and areas. They say that in hiring the pool of potential police officers, black women are a group that is traditionally underrepresented. I hope that Nelson's example will encourage other black women to apply in suburban communities like Milford. I mean, recruiting black police officers is one thing, but actually having black police officers or potential police officers want to volunteer is another, I think they're probably both as hard as each other. And finally, Lamont doctors caution COVID pandemic is not over, despite public behavior that includes few people wearing masks. Governor Ned Lamont and Connecticut health officials caution that the COVID-19 pandemic is not over. Though COVID cases and hospitalizations have been declining in Connecticut, recent increases have raised some concern about the BA2 subvariant, which drove surges in other parts of the world. They said if you remember from 1918, you could see that there were ripples that went on for maybe 5, even 10 years. My instinct is we're going to have some ripples. I think what's coming out of Britain is a ripple. I worry a little bit about what happens in the fall. Yeah, I worry about that too, I'm still the only one wearing a mask in the store. Luna's dropped in from Massachusetts. Hi, Luna. Thank you for joining us. First time on the show. This is what you do. You kind of sit and you listen to me talking away, and then occasionally you kind of join in. If you want to. I mean, you don't have to. You're very welcome just to, have me on in the background. But we're looking at the news. We read the newspapers. If there's a newspaper in your area, in Massachusetts that you would like us to cover, I kind of read through it, review it, and try and make sense of it for you. That's kind of how the show works. And if you have an Echo show, which I don't think you do, I think you've got an Echo, just a regular Echo speaker. If you want to see this show as well as hear it, then you can go to YouTube and type in Anthony Davis Backchannel, or you can communicate via your web browser at backchannel.tv. Okay, let's move on with the old newspapers to the... Oh, we're going to do Connecticut next. Oh, another Connecticut. Sorry. I thought you were Connecticut. You're not. You're Massachusetts. Sorry, I'm just waking up today. The News Times in Connecticut. Jones. I could have done a better job on Sandy Hook. Oh, this is InfoWars host Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist, in Connecticut on Tuesday and Wednesday for depositions in the Sandy Hook defamation case. I mean, you can't go defaming the story of a mass shooting and then backtrack. It doesn't work like that. It says after his first day of questioning under oath in the Sandy Hook defamation case, Alex Jones told viewers in a video that he was being demonized for falsely reporting that the worst crime in modern Connecticut history never happened. I'll just admit it, he said, I could have done a better job on Sandy Hook. Some of the anomalies that were reported were not accurate, and I admitted it years before I was sued. Jones said in the video after he sat for a deposition on Tuesday in Bridgeport with lawyers representing an FBI agent and 8 families who won a defamation suit against him in November. Have I been a little reckless? Sometimes, I admit it. I've tried to get better over the years, even before I was sued. I mean, it's just not good enough, When a whole load of kids are executed, it did not happen. It happened. Just meet the parents of those children. He's just a really bad person. He's one of these people who has an act, right? He has an act, which is the strong man, the angry man, the anti-establishment man, and it pays his bills. He realized that that's an act that makes him money. Same with Rush Limbaugh. And so these people go further and further down the rabbit hole because they want to make more and more money. It's the same with Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham or Sean Hannity or any of these people who have these shows on the TV and the radio. And they just go for it. You know? And the reality is that in the process, if they have 3 million viewers or listeners, then that news spreads like wildfire. What else do we have here? Lawmaker vows tax break will be reality. This is the legislature's Finance Committee took the first step on Tuesday toward creating a new state income tax for lower middle-income families with children. That's the same story from the other newspaper. Not much new stuff happening in Connecticut from one paper to the next, it seems. Let's do a third paper for Connecticut and see if they have the same stories. Yes, they do. The Hartford Courant leads with the same tax cut package for families. They also talk about drivers, though. It says, in an atmosphere ripe for election year tax cuts, a key legislative committee voted on Wednesday for Governor Ned Lamont's tax cut package for residential property owners and senior citizens. The Finance Committee approved Lamont's high-profile plan to increase the property tax credit on the state income tax to a maximum of $300, up from $200. That's good. Students and parents seeking investigation. Push comes after local board rejects plans for school-based mental health center. I mean, you know, I'll read it to you anyway. It says a group of more than 50 Killingly parents and residents are asking the State Department of Education to investigate the town's school board after the body rejected a plan that would have created a mental health center at the high school amid an increase in related challenges among students. The proposal for the centre, which would have come at no additional cost to the district, was voted down 6-3 by the Killingly School Board at a meeting in March, despite vocal support from students and parents. In a complaint filed on Tuesday morning, community members argued the board is neglecting its duties to meet standards set by the state, including commitments to social and emotional health, outlined in the state's 5-year strategic plan. So, the problem is mental health is so underfunded in everywhere, even in mental health institutions. It's underfunded. And you know why? Because it's an unknown quantity. You know, you can't value mental health because it relies on the patient communicating their needs. Or an expert going into somebody's mind and extrapolating somebody's needs. It's not like a cut or a bruise or a graze or a head injury or something that is physical where you can see it and a doctor can go, yep, I know what that is, I can fix that. Mental health isn't just an unknown quantity. It relies on either the patient being well enough to communicate their needs or a mental health professional being professional enough to be able to climb inside the mind of the patient and do some analysis. And that can't be done in one session. Can't be done in triage, you know? And so consequently, the cost of mental health is so expensive. And because lawmakers know that it's an unknown quantity, they know that it could be a bottomless pit of funding, mental health. And so what they tend to do is say, okay, we've got this amount for it, this amount. And that will have to cover mental health because mental health could swallow up the entire national budget. That's my opinion. Anyway, it's just my opinion. Sanctions squeeze Putin's family, 2 daughters and others in Russian leaders' inner circle targeted. Yes, the US rolled out a new wave of financial sanctions on Wednesday against Russia that Joe Biden said would place lasting penalty on the country's economy. The United Kingdom quickly followed suit, and more pain was coming from the European Union as the Allies pressed forward with the escalating campaign to tighten the economic screws on Russian President Putin for war crimes in Ukraine. Making it personal, the US sanctions singled out Putin's family, targeting his 2 adult daughters, in addition to blocking 2 Russian banks. Biden said that Russia has already failed in its initial war after the country's forces were turned back from the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. He cautioned, however, that this fight is far from over. Well, somebody was saying on one of the newspapers this morning that this war could go on for years. Years. And you know what that would mean? It would mean that Ukraine as a country would cease to exist as a functioning place. Because if the devastation in Mariupol and Bucha, if this devastation is anything to go by, the Russians are basically just going to annihilate every town and city. So there is nothing left. There's no infrastructure. There's no services, there's no public buildings. Everything will get razed to the ground. So basically the whole country will get annihilated. And Ukraine will go from being a magnificent functioning democracy to being a shell of its former self pretty damn quickly. Grant to aid redevelopment near Dunkin' Donuts Park. No park should be named Dunkin' Donuts Park. It's really not good. A redevelopment project that seeks to connect downtown Hartford with the city neighborhoods to the north has won a $6.3 million state grant, part of a new program aimed at boosting livability in towns and cities across the state. The grant for the redevelopment of long-blighted corner northwest of Hartford's Dunkin' Donuts Park was part of a $45 million in funding announced on Wednesday by Governor Ned Lamont, the first round from the Connecticut Communities Challenge grant program. Interesting. So there we go. Those are the three stories on the Hartford Courant this morning. Nancy's dropped in from Illinois. Hello, Nancy. Welcome. And Luna, Kingly Duck, no name. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you. Okay, next. On the newspaper front. The Times from Los Angeles. More images of a devastated Ukraine. The tanks lining the streets in Bucha, where the horrors of Russian occupation have come to light, and a family walking through the remains of their town. A photograph of a woman weeping over the grave of her son in the garden of her house in Bucha. And another image of authorities gathering information on bodies found in Bucha before they're taken to the morgue. Literally dozens and dozens of bodies. For a parent to lose a child, a grown parent to lose a child, a child who is of any age, from 1 through any age, it's got to be the worst thing that can happen to a human, right? To lose the child that you have birthed. And as a parent, it's something I think about a lot, the concept of my children not being safe. It's terrifying. And I try not to think about it because it's too upsetting. But this is my point about understanding the effect of the thousands of people that have been killed now. They all have parents, all of them. Parents, the grief, the level of grief from this country is overwhelming. Ukraine tells civilians in east to flee before Russian assault is the headline. Russian forces carried out punishing strikes against key Ukrainian cities on Wednesday, as Ukrainian authorities urged residents of an imperiled eastern region to flee while they still could. With the fighting showing signs of intensifying in the country's south and east, Ukrainian officials told residents of the Luhansk governor, told residents of the Luhansk region, to evacuate before the onslaught. Luhansk governor said on Wednesday on Facebook that people were escaping under the roar of enemy guns. In suburbs around the capital, Kiev, Ukrainian investigators pressed ahead with the grim task of documenting evidence of war crimes in the form of mass graves and mutilated bodies as Ukrainian troops and mine clearers worked to defuse booby traps and explosives left behind by retreating Russian forces. Yeah, this whole booby trap thing is insane, because they're saying this is happening everywhere now. Wherever the Russians are leaving a city, they are also leaving mines everywhere. Moscow continued to brush aside mounting world outrage over the apparent execution-style killings of civilians, even as Washington and its Western allies moved to impose sharp new sanctions. Ukrainian officials accused Russia of trying to cover up war crimes in other occupied areas, saying that Moscow is now aware that haphazard efforts in the Kiev region have left behind an abundance of evidence. DA won't charge officers in killings. This is Los Angeles District Attorney's Office will not file charges in the controversial shooting deaths of an Inglewood couple who were gunned down by police inside their car in 2016. Prosecutors said they had insufficient evidence to charge the 5 Inglewood police officers who opened fire on Keisha Michael and Marquintaine Sandlin in February The officer's legal conclusion laid out in the 36-page document is largely centered on the determination that prosecutors could not disprove that the officers had a reasonable fear that either Michael or Sandlin would reach for the loaded gun that officers saw inside the car. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't kill people. Let baddies kill people, not police. If these people were truly baddies and they wanted to shoot somebody, then fine, that's their job. They shoot and kill people because they're baddies. I don't believe they are in this case, but if they were. But the police should not be executors. Executioners, I should say. You know? In a separate report also made public late on Wednesday, prosecutors said they would not charge the Pasadena police, who shot and killed Anthony McClain as he fled from a traffic stop 2 years ago. The August 2020 shooting spurred protests by Black Lives Matter in the streets of Old Pasadena and gained attention in the nationally renowned civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump. These people are all black, by the way, just so you know. These are all black, and invariably the police officers are not black. You know, you are twice as likely to be killed in America if you are black. Twice as likely. 13% of the population is black. You are 27% of all police shootings have been of black people. So you're twice as likely to be killed if you're black in America by the police. Case against OnlyFans star sparks debate in Singapore. Erotic creator challenges his city's state's taboo on sex. I have not looked at OnlyFans, but I hear it is very good. So there we go. That's the LA Times. Oh, there's just one more story here. It says the headline is "Gun in Capitol Mayhem had been modified as state and federal authorities continue to piece together how so many people were killed and wounded in Sunday's shooting in downtown Sacramento, and their attention has turned to a small, seemingly innocent culprit, a gun accessory that quickly and cheaply turns many handguns into weapons capable of spraying dozens of rounds with a single pull of the trigger. At least one of the guns, police say, was recovered from the massacre that left 6 people dead and twice as many injured, have been modified with a so-called auto-sear or switch to boost its firepower. The conversion devices are illegal, and authorities said they are turning up at crime scenes across the U.S. with alarming frequency. So there we go. That's the LA Times on this day. Rhonda has dropped in from Ohio. Precious Dinosaur is here. Hello, sir, or madam, or in between, whoever you may be. Nice to see you. I mean, that's the other problem with these pseudonyms. It's harder to address people with the pseudonyms as well, you know? Blake is with us as well. Lovely, wonderful, welcome. Pleased to know you're here. What else do we have? Oh, the San Francisco Chronicle. Okay, let's do that. Gangs a factor in mass shooting. We talked a little about this yesterday, didn't we? The police on Wednesday said that the Sunday's mass shooting was gang-related, and investigators believe at least 5 people fired guns during the shooting. The shootout between 2 groups in a crowded downtown corridor early Sunday left 6 people dead, 12 wounded, including one of 3 men who were arrested on suspicion of illegally possessing firearms following the shooting. None of the 3 men arrested so far were booked on homicide charges, but one faces charges of firing a gun during the shooting, the police said. So, you know, a little bit more info there. Neighbors oppose an 8-acre expansion of campus, an increase in enrollment. This is a private school, fights to grow in Oakland. 7 miles from UC Berkeley, a different school that wants to expand enrollment is facing a similar fight with the one unfolding at the university. Neighbors protesting new students and buildings in their backyards. Yeah, it's always good to protest education. Let's not educate people. You know, let's not educate. It says an elite Oakland private school that wants to expand its 14-acre campus by 8 acres and grow enrollment by nearly 300 over 20 years is battling neighbors who say the school is getting too big and the neighborhood can't handle the impact. Het Royce, a K-12 preparatory school, has ambitious expansion plans that include a new performing arts center, gathering space for students, a STEM center, outdoor classrooms, gardens, walking trails, and an underground pedestrian tunnel. But residents say that their neighborhood are in wildfire danger zone and ill-equipped to handle a growing campus, and they vow to fight the expansion at every and even possibly sue the development if it moves forward. I mean, it's just hard to say, obviously I don't know anything about this, but the point is that, I just believe the educational establishment should always grow. That's my personal view. But I understand, because I have this with my daughter's school, there is no room for my daughter's school. Like, in terms of drop-offs and pickups, it's impossible. It is an impossible place. We manage it somehow, but it is a horrible experience. More sanctions levied as Russia keeps up attack. It says Russian forces on Wednesday carried out punishing strikes against key Ukrainian cities, brushing aside mounting world outrage over execution-style killings of civilians, even as Washington and its Western allies moved to impose sharp new sanctions against Moscow. And a ballot measure would tax rich to curb wildfires. It says how much fire season fouls up the air hasn't been lost on anyone living in California recently. The smoke, the orange sky, the smell of burning wood. A ballot initiative that appears almost certain to go before voters in November takes aim at wildfire pollution and more. Dubbed the Clean Cars and Clean Air Act, the measure would tax California's wealthiest residents, those making more than $2 million a year, and channel the proceeds to helping the state curb wildfires and smoke. The initiative also targets automobile exhaust by directing new tax revenue towards boosting the number of electric cars and trucks on the road. Already, California is investing heavily in fire management and zero-emissions vehicles. I do love a zero-emissions vehicle. I just do. I'm a convert. What can I tell you? In my apartment today, when I left there to come down here, it was about 87 degrees. And I still won't put the air conditioning on. I just won't. I'll open the windows and I'll blow a little fan, which just circulates the air. But I don't want to. I just don't feel that air conditioning is it's just not good for the planet. It just isn't. 911 calls from SF McDonald's underscore crisis for workers. It says in 6 years working McDonald's restaurants in San Francisco, Jose Ramirez thought he'd seen it all. Customers swearing over missing sauce packets, flinging trays of food over order mistakes, punching doors and windows after being asked to leave. But the former employee never expected to witness a homicide. That happened in February in 2016 when an unidentified assailant shot the passenger of a car leaving the McDonald's parking lot in the Fillmore district, right across the street from a police substation. Wow. San Francisco has had the most calls related allegedly violent incidents to the police in 911 calls related to allegedly violent incidents in McDonald's. Los Angeles comes in second with 3,000. So 4,000 in San Francisco and 3,000 in Los Angeles. This is over a 3-year period. Stockton, Fresno, Sacramento, and Long Beach, and San Diego also. I mean, it's risky, isn't it? Going anywhere is risky these days. I because of the gun culture in America, I don't go out in places unnecessarily. So, if I go to the supermarket, the grocery store, and it's in a I don't know. I'm always cautious and conscious about if there was a shooter and how I would get out. And my theory is if there was a shooter, I would just run for the door as quickly as possible. And if I get shot running for the door, then so be it. But I'd rather just get the hell out of there. The last thing I ever want to be is a hostage. I don't think I would make a very good hostage. I'd rather just run, obviously via the self-checkout so I could pay for my goods. But I would just run for the car and just drive off. I don't want to be around. I don't want to see this. I do not want to witness this. It's really not in my best interests to be in a situation. The Washington Times this morning, failure to capture Kiev shakes Russians, economy reels from Putin moves. Yes, Russia's push to capture Kiev has failed, and all of its troops have retreated from the outskirts of the Ukrainian capital, Pentagon officials said on Wednesday, marking a crushing defeat for the Kremlin and dealing a blow to the country's perceived status as a global military power. The complete pullback from the Kiev region, which Russian planners appear to have believed would fall easily, is the most dramatic evidence so far that a war barely 6 weeks old could have consequences that will be felt for decades. U.S. defense officials said Russian forces completed their withdrawal from Kiev and the city of Chernihiv, effectively ending the effort to overthrow Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and pull the democracy back into Moscow's orbit. The campaign to take Kiev was marred by a stunning series of tactical and strategical failures by Russian President Putin's army, and analysts say his legacy will now be tied to an historic blunder that cost thousands of lives and shook the foundations of Moscow's economy. The economic fallout for Mr. Putin continued on Wednesday as the Biden administration announced another round of sanctions, specifically targeting his adult children and two of Russia's largest banks. The latest financial punishments come amid outrage over alleged Russian war crimes in Bucha, where civilians appear to have been executed at close range, some with apparent gunshots to the head and others appearing to have had their throats slashed. The Kremlin has dismissed the images from Bucha as Ukrainian propaganda meant to stir up anti-Russian sentiment. I mean, I don't think that the Court of Human Rights is going to think that, or The Hague, or wherever this ends up. Ready to die in the fight, Ukrainian pilots determined to defend homeland. It says more than a month since Russian invasion, a Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot whose call sign is Juice says he no longer feels nervous when he steps into the cockpit. He's accepted that each mission could be his last and the odds are against the underdog Ukrainian Air Force. It's almost a one-way ticket to fight Russian fighters, he said in an interview with the Washington Times. It's very difficult. We are ready to die in the fight. We don't want to die, but if we have to, we want to be effective before we die. His account of the brutal air war against a better armed Russian Air Force underscored Ukraine leaders' pleas for more help from the West. Outgunned and outnumbered, the world has looked on in awe as Ukraine's Air Force continues to pose a formidable threat to Russia in the sky above Ukraine. I just got an alert saying that the Ketanji Brown Jackson vote is about to go ahead. So in a matter of moments, we're about to discover the first female black Supreme Court Justice here in America, which is a pretty eventful and momentous thing. So we'll give that a mention as it happens. Isn't it the launch today? Oh, no, that was yesterday. Yesterday was that launch. Do you remember we were going to cover the... I thought it was Wednesday. They've probably pushed it. Maybe they pushed it because of weather. Okay, well, we'll look at that. Yes, Ukrainian forces have claimed to have destroyed nearly 150 aircraft since the war began. Russia has yet to claim complete air superiority despite fielding far superior fighters. Juice and his fellow pilot Moonfish both requested not to be identified by name for fear of Russian retaliation against their families. They told the Times that what the Ukrainian Air Force lacks in aircraft and weapon systems, their pilots and ground crew make up for with their sheer will and ironclad determination. He said, "We are fighting for the right stuff. We're watching the horrors they are doing to civilians in the cities that they have captured, and it makes us think there is no other option." Sorry, I appear to have hiccups. Recession fears loom over Biden, and Democrats complicate agenda midterm campaign, says the Washington Times. Well, that's actually propaganda. The Washington Times is a propaganda newspaper, just so you know. It's we forget that these newspapers all have a bias. But it says recession fears are beginning to spike across Washington and Wall Street, complicating Biden's agenda heading into the midterm elections. Economists say the Federal Reserve System's efforts to lower soaring inflation by raising interest rates are likely to trigger a recession in the coming months. They note the economy racked by supply chain issues and an over-generous COVID-19 relief package appears primed to enter a tailspin. I mean, this is actually not true. This is not a true story. This is a propaganda story that's placed in the Washington Times, which is a kind of right-wing, kind of religious and political newspaper. David's just popped in from Alabama. Hello, David. Welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us here. If you want to watch the show, you can go to YouTube. If you want to message the show, backchannel.tv on your web browser. Oh, yes, let's look at the Tulare Advance Register. This is another California newspaper. Parents face nightmare, Tulare boy poked by drug needle at ballpark. Oh, man, that's crazy. Parents voiced concern to the city leaders there on Tuesday after a boy recently poked himself with a syringe that he found on the ground at a local baseball diamond. The accidental jab happened at the Tulare Little League Park on March 26 after the boy found the needle on the ground behind a dugout and began to play with it. The boy's parents took him to the hospital where he was determined to be unharmed and quickly released. The incident is representative of larger issues that have harangued families at the Little League in nearby Centennial Park for the past several years. Unhoused people living in an encampment on railroad road property that abuts the park have caused problems for the association. Yeah, well, you need like teams of people who are constantly doing cleanup if there's an area where a homeless encampment is, close by, for sure. Conway and Hubbard will likely go toe-to-toe in June. Runoff is the headline. Tulare conservative Connie Conway leads the 22nd congressional district race, with Lauren Hubbard, a progressive Democrat, second. Neither have the magic 50% needed to take the seat this week. The first election of 2022 unfolded in Tulare and Fresno counties, with 6 candidates competing to fill out the term of longtime Congressman Devin Nunes, who resigned to run former President Donald Trump's fledgling social media company. Yeah, I think Devin Nunes thought he was going to make a million, and it turned out he's probably going to get sued. This is Truth Social, which is this disaster of an app that is supposed to be a rival to Twitter, and it turns out it is not. So there we go. That's the Tulare Advance Register. Mariupol's dead, put at 5,000 now as Ukraine braces in the east. Civilians pour over grisly aftermath of atrocities. It's so desperate. The level of desperation now is on another. It's just incomprehensible to me. That in some countries, like here in the West, everyone's like alive and well and going to Kmart and having a really good time, and yet over there, an allied country, there are people lying in shallow graves, burned to within an inch of their life, burned to their loss of life. We're the same. We're all the same. There's a lot of Ukrainian flags hanging in my neighborhood now. I don't know if you found that near where you are. Is there any Ukrainian flags hanging in solidarity with the Ukrainian people in your neighborhood? I've spotted like 3 or 4 in mine. I'm running out of places to put flags. I have a huge BLM flag outside my house and an LGBTQ plus flag outside my house. I mainly did it because my landlord's a Trump supporter and I wanted to just stick the knife in a little bit. But it's also nice when people, come to the house and they see that it's a, supportive and friendly space. Craig has joined us. Hello, Craig. Welcome. David as well. Junior. Lawful Gorilla, Rhonda, Precious Dinosaur, Blake, Nancy, Luna, Kingly Duck. Welcome. Nice to see you. California sees big weather warm-up with spring heat wave is the headline. California's weather roller coaster headed upward on Wednesday, bringing a summer-like heat wave and elevating fire danger. A strong ridge of high pressure building over the region will push temperatures well above normal through Friday, the National Weather Service said. Record high temperatures were possible in some areas in Southern California. Strong gusts from the north were shifting to the northeast, becoming warm, dry Santa Ana winds, high temperatures soaring above far normal levels. The warmest areas on Tuesday could top 100 degrees, apparently. Thursday for today. A brush fire spread up a hillside along State Route 118 before Los Angeles County firefighters assisted by other agencies stopped it after several acres were scorched. I mean, it's very hot already. It's currently 80 degrees, and it's only 9:45 in the morning. So by lunchtime, today is not a good day to go out. Today is like a stay-in day. Stay in with the AC on. Contradicting what I said earlier. So there we go. That's the Tulare Advance Register, if I'm saying that right. Okay, let's go to Florida now. Everybody loves Florida and the news press. Ukraine murals vandalized. Oh, lovely. What a lovely place, Florida. Vandals have defaced 2 Fort Myers murals that showed support for Ukraine and its president, Volodymyr Zelensky. But just like Zelensky, the people behind those murals remain defiant. They'll repaint the damaged outdoor artwork at the Alliance for the Arts, they say. And do you know what? They plan to make even more murals. We're all fired up, said the Alliance for the Arts Executive Director, Molly Deckhart. They're going to have to throw paint on 10 more murals because we're going to commission 10 more. The 4x8-foot murals depicting Zelensky, one against a backdrop of a Ukrainian flag, can be seen by traffic passing by on busy McGregor Boulevard. The vandalism was discovered on Monday morning, red, white and blue paint mixed with metallic stars and smeared across both murals. It was just really crushingly disappointing, said Shari Schifrin, director of the Fort Myers Mural Society, which commissioned them. Fort Myers artist Eric Schlack, who made the freestanding murals with Bokelia Roland Ruocco, said he wasn't exactly surprised by the vandalism. Well, that's Florida for you. You know, what can I tell you? Tragically, Florida is full of some very angry people. Fort Lauderdale story here. Cruz case, judge lets jurors tour Parkland School. This is the jurors who will determine whether Parkland gunman Nicholas Cruz will spend the rest of his life in prison or face the death penalty. Will soon walk around the building where 4 years ago he killed 17 people and injured 17 others in the nation's deadliest school shooting. Broward Circuit Court Judge Elizabeth Shearer on Tuesday struck down a challenge by Cruz's attorneys to stop the jury's planned tour. The court finds that a jury view of the crime scene remains useful and proper, Shearer wrote in her order, released on the second day of jury selection. Cruz killed 17 people, 14 students and 3 Stoneman Douglas staff members during a 7-minute shooting spree on February 14, 2018. So, there we go. Carla, I just wondered if you were able to find like a live stream of Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation and maybe we could play it in. Otherwise, I could always try and find one if that's easier, but let me know. And also then a photograph of Forbes' list of the richest, and there's a very rich white man on the front of this newspaper. It says serial entrepreneur David Hoffman has achieved billionaire status. He made it on Forbes' list of the world's richest people in the world. The Naples resident debuts at number 2,190 this year. His estimated net worth $1.3 billion. Isn't that insane that this guy's got $1.3 billion and yet there are 2,189 people ahead of him with even more money? It's nice, but I'm fundamentally not any happier, Hoffman said of his first-time appearance. He joins the usuals from Southwest Florida, 5 others from Naples and 1 from Bonita Springs. I'm the new kid on the block, Hoffman said. A self-made businessman, Hoffman had captured the spotlight in Southwest Florida for the millions he spent acquiring local businesses and investing in real estate. We're still at it. We have things under contract now and businesses we're buying, but we're not stopping. The Forbes ranking includes a brief profile of Hoffman. He's the largest commercial real estate owner in Naples, and he acquires businesses and real estate in Southwest Florida. And there he is. Wonderful. Maybe look at C-SPAN. Look at C-SPAN, I think. Okay, let's see what else we have here. That was Florida. Oh, St. Lucie News Tribune for Florida. They lead with Stop Woke Act may affect businesses' bias policies. Florida has set to become the first state in the country to restrict how workplaces can talk about racism and bias. I mean, they really are taking this to another level, aren't they? They're going to shoot themselves in the foot. The legislation HB 7, better known as the Stop Woke Act, was pushed aggressively by Governor Ron DeSantis and sailed through the Republican-controlled legislature last month, despite pushback from dozens of businesses and chambers of commerce. The bill also restricts discussions of such topics in schools, in line with a conservative-led trend to tamp down instruction on race, gender, and sexuality. But Florida is unique in extending the provision to workplaces. Any violation could open up employers to a civil rights lawsuit. Experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion training say the bill, which could be signed into law within weeks, is likely already having a chilling effect, particularly for small and mid-sized companies without deep pockets to defend legal action. Yeah. He calls it the Stop Woke Act. Awake, not woke. I mean, DeSantis is really one of, he's just like an evil person. Just this idea now of white Christian nationalists just undermining anybody who is not a white Christian nationalist is no different to Nazism. It's just no different to Nazism, is it? Think about that. People don't like to say these things out loud because they fear that, the whole kind of Nazi World War II movement was so horrific that, we should never compare because it's like disrespecting the dead of the Second World War. But I disagree. This is why you have to call it out, because otherwise more people will be dead. It's not rocket science. Like, call it out. If you are anti-minority groups, how is that any different to the Nazi Party being anti-Jews? How is it any different? Young owls prepare to soar into life is the headline. A pair of young great horned owls, along with their mother, hang out in pine and palm trees near their nest on Tuesday at Savannah's Preserve State Park in St. Lucie County. The owlets are about 2.5 months old and have learned to fly. They feed on rabbits, squirrels, rodents, and more. The owlets will likely stay in the area until September, when they'll find new territory as the parents stay behind to mate again. I do find owls completely fascinating. They might be my new favorites. My kids always ask me what my favorite animals are. And I think an owl might be my new favorite. There's a couple that live here, owls, in the tree outside my house. Woo-hoo! That's all they do, all the time. Woo-hoo! Woo! Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll squeeze in the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson in about an hour's time. So stay with us for that. It's super interesting. And we're talking to Hal today as well, don't forget. So we've got that to think about. Bill targets, maybe you could ask the Supreme Court if they could hurry it up a bit, because we have to talk to your pal Hal. Just see if they can do it at just 10 minutes earlier, so it doesn't interrupt the great handover of handovers. Bill targets St. Lucie River Rail Bridge's open time. This is the House of Representatives passed legislation requiring St. Lucie River Railroad Bridge to be open more frequently for boaters. So if you're taking your boat, now you know. Okay, let's move on. Jay has joined us. Hello, Jay. Jumbled Dinosaur, Alex is in the house, Craig is in the house, David's in the house. Welcome to the house. Florida Times Union is next. It's so interesting reading about Florida. You really get to kind of see how a state that operates so differently to California, where I am, is just like managing its people. It's like it's two different Americas. Ukrainians confront atrocities, it says. Ukraine gathered its dead and collected evidence of Russian atrocities on the ruined outskirts of Kiev as the two sides geared up on Wednesday for what could be a climactic battle by Moscow's forces to seize the country's industrial east. And as the US and its Western allies moved to impose new sanctions against the Kremlin in retaliation for what they branded war crimes, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russian forces were trying to push deep into Ukraine in the east, but the Ukrainian army was holding them back. Duval transgender student is barred from boys soccer. It says when Zach moved from Washington State to Jacksonville to live with his dad last year, he looked forward to trying for the Atlantic Coast High boys soccer team. He's played soccer since he was 5, said the sport has always served as an outlet for him. Zach, whose last name is being withheld to protect his identity, is transgender. He was designated female at birth and began his transition about 3 years ago while in 7th grade. The sophomore made it through several rounds of tryouts for the boys' soccer team this year, when the head coach told him he would need to move to the girls' team tryouts instead. A recent law signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis bars transgender girls from playing on the girls' soccer team, but the law allows transgender boys to play on the boys' team. What? When Duval County School District leaders were told by a Times Union reporter what happened to Zach, they acknowledged that things were handled the wrong way. Now they're apologizing. I mean, come on. Okay, well, let's have a quick drop in on Congress and hear what Chuck Schumer, who is the leader of the majority leader in the House, and see what he has to say about the Ketanji Brown Jackson. Let's have a little listen to her. Let's have a look. We can have a little drop in and see they're all. Did we just miss him? Can you blow that window up there? Just that video window. I think you can. If you hover over the video window, it brings up a little. Yeah, I just saw the button. There you go. There it is. So yeah, this is interesting, isn't it? This is. Let me just make this a bit bigger so I can have a look at it myself. So, who's presiding? Who is that? Oh, that looks. Oh, I wonder if you can rewind. That would be interesting. So this is a kind of live view of the U.S. Senate, and getting a sense of what's happening there. No rewind facility. Clever. Look at this. Look at this amazing technology we have here.
Eastern lawmakers will vote on two bills.
Senate Judiciary Committee.
Love Raphael Warnock. He's a good guy.
Mr. President,
Senator from
through the end of the year, helping bring economic relief.
Gimmick. Rather than accept responsibility, real relief, not political gimmicks. And that's why
Come on, Chuck.
vote at 1:45.
People have just heard is talking points straight out of Big Oil's playbook. A gas tax holiday is a common sense.
You see, in the American Senate, there's no debate. You know, no one's looking at anyone.
This is
They don't debate anything. They just make a series of statements, and they expect people to kind of think that that's a debate. And it really isn't.
This is something we could do right now to help American families balance.
It's very
their
frustrating.
budgets and make ends meet.
Because,
So
you
while
know,
I am disappointed
I
to
don't
see
really.
my colleagues
How can
block
you progress anything if there's no debate? It just doesn't make
Mr.
sense.
President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President.
Okay,
I
let's
ask
look
unanimous
at
consent
Chuck
that all
Schumer now and see what he has to
post-closure time on the
say.
Jackson nomination expire at 1:45 p.m. today.
Without objection.
And Mr. President, for the information of the Senate, there'll be a roll call vote at 1:45 p.m. today on confirmation of the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Senators are encouraged to be seated prior to the start of the vote, are encouraged to cast their vote from their desk. Yield the floor.
So it's likely that no Republicans are going to vote for her, apart from the three that have been, previously mentioned, and that is Susan Collins of Maine, and who were the other two? Is it Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger? They're the ones serving on the January 6th committee. So fundamentally, she'll pass because she only needs there's a 50-50 split in the Senate, and the tie-breaking vote will be from Kamala Harris, the Vice President, who will be sitting in that Senate presiding chair, and so you'll kind of get to see what that looks like. But it's definitely going to pass. She's going to pass. It's going to make history this afternoon. And it'll be nice to be present for that, to get a feeling and a sense of what that feels like to have the first black female Supreme Court judge in the United States. And definitely an historic day. So you'll remember this day, the 7th of April, 2022, hopefully. And you'll realize that this is definitely something that you couldn't imagine. It's a little bit like when Obama got inaugurated and, people just couldn't believe that a black, a black man would make it into the White House, Okay, so let's jump on... before we jump on some more newspapers, let's do the US News Update, because it's time for that. This is a podcast that I host every day. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. And, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's like the latest on what's happening in America. It's Thursday, April 7th, from the Volley Network. This is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. The US House of Representatives recommended contempt of Congress charges on Wednesday for Peter Navarro and Daniel Scavino, former aides to Donald Trump, for failing to cooperate with a House probe into the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Navarro, who was a top trade advisor to the Republican former president, and Scavino, who was a deputy chief of staff, did not comply with subpoenas to appear before the committee probing the January 2021 attack. The Democrat-controlled House backed the charges against the two men by a vote of 220 to 203, which refers the matter to the Department of Justice for a decision on whether to press criminal charges. Only two Republicans, Select Committee members, Representatives Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, joined Democrats in voting in favor. Scavino and Navarro have argued that their communications are protected by executive privilege, though many legal experts have said that principle does not apply to former presidents. Meanwhile, a decorated U.S. Air Force veteran accused of defrauding donors in a fundraising campaign to help former President Trump build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border has agreed to plead guilty to wire fraud, conspiracy, and 3 tax charges. The U.S. Department of Justice revealed their plea agreement with Brian Kolfage, who led the We Build the Wall campaign, in a filing on Wednesday with the U.S. District Court in Manhattan. Also on Wednesday, a judge dealt a setback to Steve Bannon ahead of his upcoming criminal trial, blocking former President Donald Trump's advisor from telling jurors that he relied on advice from lawyers when he defied a congressional subpoena. Your daily US News Update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel. There it is, the US News Update. Download it wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Davis. We've been looking at the morning papers. Florida Times Union at the moment. China yet to assign blame for massacre. This is a story about China on Wednesday saying images of civilian deaths in the Ukrainian town of Bucha are deeply disturbing, but that no blame should be apportioned until all the facts are known. Emerging evidence of what appeared to be widespread civilian massacres in the wake of Russian withdrawals from the Kiev areas may complicate Beijing's attempts to guide public opinion over the conflict, in which China has refused to criticize Moscow. It's not good, is it? You do not want China on the side of Russia against the rest of the world. You just don't. Nelson's dropped in from Pennsylvania. Hello, Nelson. David as well. Legit Fly can see us. Jay is in. Jumbled Dinosaur and Alex and Craig David and Junior and Lawful Gorilla and Stacy, welcome. I'm Anthony Davis. It's Backchannel, 6 minutes after 10 here on the West Coast, 6 minutes after 1 Eastern. In about 40 minutes' time will be the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson. It'll be the vote, and then obviously the vote will suggest that she has been approved. I don't know that there'll be a huge amount to see, but we could maybe have it on in the background and we can talk about it and mention it in some ways. Let's just jump on a couple more papers before we get into some of the heavy lifting of this show. The Florida Today, I think, is the final newspaper on the pile. Photograph of Janet Yellen warning Russian aggression will have a huge economic impact. Lober Chief of Staff to helm D2 office. It says Van Valkenburg to oversee operations until vacancy is filled. This is Brevard County will experiment with a hybrid approach to managing the duties and responsibilities of the District 2 office after the departure of Commissioner Brian Lober. Commissioners unanimously voted for that operation during Tuesday's County Commission meeting, hoping to leverage the existing institutional knowledge and expertise of Lober's Chief of Staff, Fritz Van Valkenburg, who would manage the daily operations of the office while the County Manager's Office would oversee the appointee. SpaceX Axiom 1 mission to ISS set for Friday launch. I have to say, the spaceship is so futuristic. It really is. It does look amazing in there. This is the one that was going to happen yesterday. It's now been pushed to Friday. The SpaceX Axiom 1 mission, the first completely privately funded and crewed mission to the International Space Station, is expected to lift off from Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center on Friday, April 8 at 11:17 a.m. According to the Space Force, weather conditions should be about 80% favorable for the launch. Space Force, I can't even say that and take it seriously. Why are they even playing along with Trump's stupid Space Force? It should have been the first thing that Biden cancelled was Space Force. It's just embarrassing. To the rest of the world, it's embarrassing. Under a deal between NASA and commercial partners SpaceX and Houston-based Axiom Space, Axiom 1 will be a first-of-its-kind mission, ferrying 3 paying passengers and a professional astronaut to the ISS for a 9-day stay. I mean, I don't think this should be allowed. I just don't. I really don't. They paid $55 million each, these people. It's basically just rich people having fun. Former NASA astronaut Michael Lopez Algeria, Axiom's Vice President of Business Development and Chief Astronaut, will command the mission. He will be joined by mission pilot Larry Connor and mission specialists Mark Pathé of Canada and Aston Tibb of Israel. Those 3 reportedly paid $55 million each for the mission. The 4 private astronauts will launch aboard SpaceX Crew Dragon Endeavour capsule. It was named by NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley during the Demo 2 mission in May 2020. I don't know. I mean, I love their spacesuits. I love the fact that they look like they're wearing waders. But I don't know, why do I feel like this is wrong? I mean, they're all astronauts, they're all trained astronauts. It's just that 3 of them are paying $55 million each. Do you see what I mean? It's like it just leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. But I feel the same about people traveling in business class when I'm in coach on the aeroplane. I'm like, how dare you have enough money to pay to sit comfortably like that when I'm sitting squished up the back here? How dare you? Florida story, Stop Woke Act may force rethinking of work diversity. It says Florida is set to become the first state in the country to restrict how workplaces can talk about racism and bias. The legislation HB 7, better known as the Stop Woke Act, was pushed aggressively by Governor Ron DeSantis and sailed through the Republican-controlled legislature last month despite pushback from dozens of businesses and chambers of commerce. The bill also restricts discussions of such topics in schools, a line with a conservative-led trend to tamp down instruction on race, gender, and sexuality. But Florida is unique in extending the provision to workplaces. Any violation could open up employers to a civil rights lawsuit. Experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion training say the bill, which could be signed into law within weeks, is likely already having a chilling effect particularly for small and mid-sized companies without deep pockets to defend legal action. It's going to put a damper on the progress that's been made and is still being made, said Dawn Siller Nixon, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion partner at the employment and labor law firm Ford Harrison. It's really fraught with a lot of pitfalls. I don't think anyone wants to be the guinea pig here. I mean, this is just like... It says the consequences go farther than just corporate liability. They say that it will likely make it harder for Florida companies to recruit and retain employees of color, and research shows that diversity in the workplace is better for the bottom line. The law makes it illegal to say racism is systemic, but the sheer fact that this policy could be passed is evidence that it is. I mean, this is like, it's the worst possible thing. The Stop Woke Act. It's insane. Elizabeth joined us from Maine. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome to Backchannel. Luke is also here. Beautiful B has joined us as well. Welcome, welcome. And lots of no name. So, we're going to pop back to the US Senate now and see what's happening there and get the latest on the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the US Supreme Court. Let's see what's happening there. So this is Senator Chuck Grassley who's speaking. He's a very old far-right extremist Republican.
Information has already been leaked. That brings me to the merits of Judge Jackson's nomination. For judicial nominees, their philosophy ought to decide how to decide cases ought to be of primary consideration. Part of having a judicial philosophy is having an understanding of the fundamental principles of our Constitution. Natural rights are a part of that system. Judge Jackson explained to us that she does not, quote, hold a position on whether individuals possess natural rights. Now that ought to be very shocking. Natural rights are basic to our constitutional system and principles of limited government. Because we all know our country was founded on the belief that's expressed in the Declaration of Independence: all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that was further nailed down in the Constitution of the United States. Our Constitution vests the three branches of government with very limited power. All other powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people thereof. The principle of limited government is what makes America an exceptional nation and sets our Constitution apart. Judges must have a proper understanding of those basic principles, and the way Judge Jackson answered those questions, particularly the answers she gave to Senator Cruz, shows that she lacks that very necessary foundation. Now I want to go on to a few other examples.
This is Senator Chuck Grassley, who is an Iowan senator.
Decisions involving the First Step Act. In that case, prosecutors had rock-solid evidence against a dangerous drug kingpin. But Judge Jackson was displeased the government pursued a mandatory minimum sentence. So she misused a motion for compassionate release to resentence that person to a sentence she thought he deserved.
This was actually a sentence in line with all other sentencing.
I know that's not what
Just
we
not
wrote
suitable
the
for Chuck
statute
Grassley,
to do.
it seems.
The act was supposed to allow elderly inmates and those suffering from terminal illness to petition for a sentence reduction. The statute also allows for a reduction, court finds an extraordinary and compelling reason. Judges should use great discretion. Judges should weigh against the charge, the dangers to society, and the risk of recidivism. At her hearing, Judge Jackson said that she based her extraordinary and compelling finding on the non-retroactive changes to the law. This radical interpretation is terrible and dangerous. Congress chose which provisions of the First Step Act would apply retroactively. The Senate is currently considering legislation that I co-sponsored with Chairman Durbin that makes some of the First Step Act provisions retroactive. But that's Congress's role, not Judge Jackson's role. Senator Durbin wouldn't have been able to broker a compromise on that legislation if senators thought the judges would rewrite the law and insert their own views from the bench.
Well, that's what judges are supposed to do.
That's
what a judge does.
Work, particularly on criminal justice reform, harder to do. That case by the name of Young is just one example of Judge Jackson's lenient approach to criminal law and sentencing. She also declined to apply a number of sentencing enhancements that Congress put into the sentencing guidelines. A case by the name of Make the Road New York versus McAleen is another case that shows how Judge Jackson used her methodology to reach a result that contradicts the plain text of the law. Congress gave the Secretary of Homeland Security, and these are the words from the law, sole and unreviewable discretion to decide whether illegal immigrants should be subject to expedited removal within 2 years. Judge Jackson reviewed the agency's decision anyway, and it seems clear why. She went out of her lane to comment on the policy as, in her words, a terrible proposal. And she claimed that the government attorney made an argument that reeks of bad faith. Reeks of bad faith are her words. In fact, her decision and her rhetoric are unfounded. So that's why her decision earned a strong rebuke from the panel of liberal and conservative judges when she was reversed in the D.C. Circuit. Judge Millett, an Obama appointee, explained it this way in the opinion, quote, "There could hardly be a more definitive expression of congressional intent than sole and unreviewable discretion." These are just a few examples of Judge Jackson's judicial activism, because her clearly shows she does not believe in or act within the limited and proper role of a judge. So I will vote against her confirmation. I yield the floor.
Well, he's voting against the confirmation because she's an intelligent black woman. It's pretty obvious that Chuck Grassley is a little bit of a racist. So, you know, all of those points that he gives make no sense. They really they really have very little, if any, truth to them, you know. And so this is what is so frustrating listening to these old guys. I mean, Chuck Grassley is nearly 90 years of age. And to have somebody who has such little grasp on modern politics and socio-economic issues is you know, as a representative is worrying, because, you know, he is responsible for a lot of the laws in this country. So these are the continuing live confirmation statements that are being made by various lawmakers in the Senate right now, leading up to a vote in about 25 minutes' time. And that vote will confirm Ketanji Brown Jackson as the first black female justice in American history. There's there's a very nice piece, actually. I wonder if I can play it to you, actually. There's a very nice little quote from Senator Raphael Warnock earlier. And he's a Democratic senator and a black man with a daughter. And this is what he had to say earlier.
Like my brother, Senator Booker, I know what it has taken for Judge Jackson to get to this moment, and nobody's going to steal my joy. Yes, I'm a senator. I'm a pastor. But beyond all of that, I'm the father of a young black girl. I know how much it means for Judge Jackson to have navigated the double jeopardy of racism and sexism to now stand in the glory of this moment in all of her excellence. For my 5-year-old daughter, and for so many young women in our country, but really, if we're thinking about it right, for all of us, seeing Judge Jackson ascend to the Supreme Court reflects the promise of progress on which our democracy rests.
I mean, the contrast of that as a kind of progressive announcement and celebration of something positive for America. Oh, Nancy Pelosi's just tested positive for COVID-19. That's not good. She's like 106. It really is, in huge contrast to what you just heard from Chuck Grassley, who basically is just whittering on about cases that he knows nothing about, with no context, that, people have written up for him to give him some ammunition and evidence against this woman. I mean, why anybody would not want somebody who is as qualified as Ketanji Brown Jackson to be part of the American story is beyond me. But I get it. It's just racism. And it's sexism. And Grassley is like the polar opposite to Ketanji Brown Jackson. For her as a forward-thinking, inclusive, educated, intelligent black female, and him as an elderly white supremacist who's institutionalized. I mean, you can't compare the two groups. They're completely different. So, anyway, that's just something to think about a little bit, But she will be seated later this summer, as you're seeing on the screen, when Stephen Breyer, whose retirement led to Joe Biden nominating Jackson for his seat, stands down after 22 years on the Supreme Court. And of course, this isn't going to change the political makeup of the court, because it's a Democratic judge replacing a Democrat judge. Excuse me, the hiccups have been with me all day. I think I've done very well to ignore them. In contrast to this celebration of a black female ascending to the Supreme Court, the other story I wanted to bring you today was about Amir Locke, of course. He's a 22-year-old black boy who was staying on his cousin's couch. No criminal charges will be brought against the Minneapolis police officer who executed Amir Locke during a no-knock raid. A SWAT team entered the home. Prosecutors said there was insufficient evidence to charge the officer Mark Hanneman, who fired the fatal shot. They also said they did not have enough evidence to prove criminal wrongdoing by any of the other officers involved. Mr. Locke was sleeping in a couch in his cousin's apartment when a 9-member SWAT team entered the home. In body cam footage released by the police after the incident, he's under a blanket on the couch holding a gun for which he had a permit in his hand. He was shot 3 times by Mr. Hanneman. His family said they believe he was startled and reached for the weapon in self-defense. A judge had approved a warrant for the raid, which was conducted as part of an investigation into a fatal shooting in the neighboring city of St. Paul. Mr. Locke was not a suspect in the killing or named in the warrant, and his death prompted outrage and protests in Minneapolis. Well, County Attorney Michael Freeman and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison said in a statement that there was insufficient admissible evidence to file criminal charges in this case. The circumstances in the case are such that an objectively reasonable officer in Officer Hanneman's position would have perceived an immediate threat of death or great bodily harm, adding that an objectively reasonable officer would not delay in using deadly force. I mean, that's the tragedy, isn't it? Because it's the culture in this country that suggests that if a police officer thinks their life is in danger, they should then shoot the other person rather than run away. Just run away. You know? It's like you came into his apartment. He was asleep in the apartment. You entered the apartment. The guy was asleep. And for a young black man to have licensed a firearm, he obviously felt that his life was in danger. From the police. These people just want to stay alive. That's all they want to do. The statement also said that Mr. Locke, an aspiring musician, was a victim and that his life mattered. He should be alive today and his death was a tragedy. Mr. Locke's mother, Karen Wells, said in a news conference following the announcement that she was disgusted with Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well, her son's death drew comparisons to the case of Breonna Taylor, a black woman who was shot and killed in her Louisville, Kentucky home by U.S. police in March 2020 during another no-knock raid, which allows police to enter without announcing their presence before entering. Ms. Wells vowed to continue the fight for the no-knock warrant bans in honor of his name and for Breonna Taylor. This cannot happen to anyone else, she said. I mean, just think about that conceptually, a no-knock warrant. To be able to enter anybody's apartment without announcing yourself whilst, like, in body armor carrying firearms. Just think about that conceptually. It just doesn't make any sense. If you've got a gun, tell people you've got a gun. Probably a good idea, otherwise someone's going to die. Well, as of tomorrow, Minneapolis police will no longer be allowed to apply or execute no-knock warrants. Why do they call them execute no-knock warrants? Because it's the no-knock warrant that causes them to do an execution. It should be the other way around. Or respond to such requests from other police forces, barring certain circumstances, the mayor's office said this week. Under the new policy, police must repeatedly knock and announce their presence prior to entry. I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? Just announce your presence. Hello, Robert. Welcome. Aaron's with us. Outgoing Bear, Limitless Gorilla, Peggy, Beautiful Bee, Luke, Elizabeth, and Nelson. No Name is with us. David as well. Legit Fly. Thank you to all of you guys for being part of the show this morning. Let's take a look at this story, very interesting story actually, about this day in 1961 on April 7. John F. Kennedy Jr. lobbied Congress to help save historic sites in Egypt. Yes, he sent a letter in which he recommended the U.S. participate in an international campaign to preserve ancient temples and historic monuments in the Nile Valley of Egypt. The campaign was initiated by UNESCO. It was designed to save sites threatened by the construction of the Aswan High Dam. It's very interesting, actually, because, I just think it's interesting how, like, geopolitically the world was so different. Egypt now is considered to be a kind of dangerous place to visit. You know, it's like on a list of places where there is an increased risk of terrorism if you visit, whereas back then it wasn't. And so, you know, people kind of have a slightly different attitude towards it now. But it said he believed that the American participation in the project would reflect the interests of the United States as well as the country's interest in ancient Egyptian culture from which many of our own cultural traditions have sprung. Can you imagine, like, Donald Trump saying these words? Can you imagine, like, Donald Trump saying, you know something, I want to protect the ancient artifacts of Egypt because of, all of our, our own cultural traditions have grown from Egypt. I mean, he's like the last person that would do that. It just shows the difference between these characters, Kennedy possessed a personal interest in the sciences and history from the beginning of his presidency, set out to promote American scholarship in these areas. His administration also wanted to develop diplomatic ties with the Arab nations in the Middle East and North Africa. Well, in 1961, the total cost of preserving Egypt's historic sites was estimated at $100 million. The U.S. contributed a total of $16 million towards the effort, which was used to help protect ruins from water rerouted for the dam, or to relocate antiquities. Endangered sites helped by U.S. money included the 13th century temples of Abu Simbel, dedicated to Ramesses II, and Queen Nefertari, and a temple at Philae called the Pearl of Egypt. In exchange for the preservation aid, the United Arab Republic and Sudan agreed to let American archaeologists excavate areas outside the Nile Valley and take some Nile Valley treasures back to U.S. museums. I mean, it's just so different to the kind of isolationist policies of the Trump administration. Do you know what I mean? It's very interesting to me. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, did not live to see any of the precious antiquities arrive in America. His widow, however, the former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, helped arrange to have Egypt's Temple of Dendur brought to New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art in 1965. The temple remains a centerpiece of the museum's collections. I've never been to Egypt. Have you been to Egypt, Carla, or anybody listening? Anyone visited have you been to anywhere in the Middle East? I mean, that's probably a bigger question, isn't it? But there he is, JFK, seeking to save Nile temples. And it's just nice that he had, time to think about the world and life outside of the United States. It's just very interesting to me that type of politics is so far now from the kind of world that we're living in, the political world that we're living in. Well, let's have a look at this story about Amazon space satellites while we're at it. This is Amazon securing rockets for broadband. Over the next 5 years, 3 new heavy-lift rockets are going to put thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit as part of Amazon's Project Kuiper. The project aims to provide broadband connections using a constellation of 3,236 satellites. Rival Starlink is said to have more than 2,300 satellites already in orbit. Well, the rockets will be made by Ariane Space, Blue Origin, which was founded by Amazon owner Jeff Bezos and United Launch Alliance. Amazon said the Project Kuiper aims to provide high-speed, low-latency broadband to customers, including households, businesses, government agencies, disaster relief operations, mobile operators, and other organizations working in places without reliable internet connectivity. And like Elon Musk's Starlink, users will connect to the internet via a terminal that communicates with the satellites. Amazon says its experience in shipping and making products like Echo and Kindle will be useful in producing and distributing these. Project Kuiper will provide fast, affordable broadband to tens of millions of customers in unserved and underserved communities around the world, according to Dave Limp, Senior Vice President for Amazon Devices and Services, in a statement announcing the deal. I mean, it's very interesting. For example, I'm having fiber broadband installed today. They were supposed to do it the other day, and they came and they realized that the fiber only came to the end of the street, not to my house, so they're now going to have to run the cables along 3 telegraph poles to get to my house. So that's what they're going to do today. They did the interior work at my house, but they've got the exterior work to do today. In fact, they're due to call me any minute, so if I have to go, all of a sudden it'll be AT&T saying, "Where are you?" How do I have to cover while I'm getting fiber installed? I mean, it's all to benefit the show. I'm only doing it for the show. But it means that my upload speed will be as fast as my download speed, because that's really the problem with copper, is that your upload speed is like 1/10 of your download speed. And I don't know about you, but I need to upload. I just do. Amazon will compete directly with SpaceX and the UK government-owned OneWeb to set up a constellation of broadband providing satellites, the company has announced. The planned Project Kuiper will involve Amazon buying the largest batch of commercial launches in history, securing space on 83 rockets over the next 5 years to launch 3,236 satellites. We still have lots of work ahead, but the team has continued to hit milestone after milestone across every aspect of our satellite system, Dave Limp, the Amazon Senior Vice President for Devices and Services, said. These launch agreements reflect our incredible commitment and belief in Project Kuiper, and we are proud to be working with such an impressive lineup of partners to deliver on our mission. Amazon's competitors have a long lead time, however. SpaceX has 2,110 satellites in orbit as part of its Starlink broadband network, while OneWeb has launched 428 of a planned 648 in its initial batch. By contrast, Project Kuiper's first launches will not be until the fourth quarter of this year, when it plans to launch 2 prototype satellites. Its first full launch does not even have a provisional date yet, with the company waiting for the results of the demonstration mission before setting its plans in stone. So there we go. Amazon booking its first rocket launches for broadband satellite project. I mean, I'll be honest, my concern is the fact that there's going to be 3,236 satellites up there. I mean, that's my concern. In addition to there's already currently 2,110 SpaceX satellites in orbit as part of the Starlink broadband, and OneWeb has got 648. I mean, this sounds like a recipe for disaster. Do we know enough about putting satellites in space? Do we know enough about the consequences of space junk? Because that's what this is, right? It's just space junk, fundamentally. And that's my fear with all of this, is that the junk is going to be the reason why this, could potentially, I don't know, in the long run be detrimental. I mean, I'm not speaking with any experience. I'm just expressing some anxiety. That's all. Just expressing anxiety because I don't know enough about it. But Amazon is investing billions of dollars. It's the largest commercial procurement of space vehicles in history. But is that a good thing? You see what I mean? I'm just playing devil's advocate. Is that a good thing? Is that what we as Earthlings want to do? Do we want to launch this number of satellites? Amazon's agreements with the 3 companies include 38 launches on ULA's Vulcan Centaur rocket, 18 launches on Ariane Space's Ariane 6, 12 launches on Blue Origin's New Glenn, with the option of additional 15 launches. These come on top of the 9 satellite launches Amazon agreed with ULA last year, total of 92. It's the largest ever contract signed by Ariane Space in its history. And it's the result of 2.5 years of talks. Adding the launches would take place between 2024 and 2027. So that's what we've got to look forward to. Should we cross live to that? Is it worth seeing that? Let's put that on and okay. Let's add that to the stream and see. Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
Not following the Democrats' recent precedents into the gutter. Unfortunately, what the Senate's process turned up was disturbing. First, the nominee would not follow the Ginsburg-Breyer precedent and denounced the insane concept of party court packing. Second, her record is full of cases where Judge Jackson ruled like a policymaker implementing personal biases.
This is not true.
Instead of a judge following the text.
That's not true.
Wherever it led.
That's not true.
And third, her aggressive judicial activism frequently focused on treating convicted criminals as gently as possible.
That's not true.
In literally case after case, from deadly fentanyl to open borders to child exploitation, Judge Jackson tilted the scales of justice away from public safety and innocent victims in favor of her career-long passion for softening up criminal sentencing.
That's not true.
In Judge Jackson's courtroom, plain legal text and clear congressional intent were no match for what the judge admits are her personal policy disagreements.
That's not true.
Even as the violent crime wave sweeps America, Democrats are pursuing a nationwide campaign to make the justice system softer on crime.
That's not true.
They're stacking the deck with far-left prosecutors, woke warriors at the Department of Justice, and federal judges who believe criminals deserve lighter treatment.
That's not true.
This project is terrible for innocent American families, and every piece of evidence suggests Democrats view Judge Jackson as its crown jewel.
That's not true.
So I'll close with this. These debates about judicial philosophy are not just academic. The charged political atmosphere around confirmations, the outsized role that unelected judges play in our national life, these are direct consequences of liberal judicial activism. They're direct results of the efforts to misuse federal courts as a progressive legislature that voters can't kick out. A republic of self-serving citizens should not spend every June watching with bated breath to see if five or six lawyers will hand down policy changes on a zero basis in the written Constitution. And the solution is not to make the court even more of a super legislature like liberals want, a delegitimizing death spiral that would destroy the rule of law. There's only one solution. The Senate should only confirm justices who will follow the text of our laws and our Constitution wherever it leads, who will leave subjective policy judgments on this side of the street where they belong. That's how we lower the temperature. That's how we shore up the courts. That's how we protect the rule of law. Staff the judiciary with brilliant men and women who understand and embrace this limited role. No other road leads anywhere good for our great nation.
Bear in mind that it was the Republican Party that pushed through the nomination and confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett in the last couple of months of Donald Trump's presidency. She had no experience on the bench. She was an academic and had never tried a case. She was also famously a member of a far-right religious cult. And they pushed through her confirmation. So the level of hypocrisy here is significant, considering that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is widely respected for her experience and for her level-headedness. And she's probably the least extreme person that you will ever meet, the most thoughtful and respectful of all groups. And yet Amy Coney Barrett is somebody who came with no experience and yet strong views. So here comes Chuck Schumer as we approach the vote.
Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Now, a few days ago, I spoke with a group of 8th graders from Cheektowaga, New York. Many of them were students of color. It was amazing. When I mentioned that this week we were confirming the judge, you could see them light up, the unmistakable look in their eyes. One day, lady thought to herself, I can do it too. It's been a dark 2 years with COVID. People getting sick and dying, many of whom we knew. Schools shutting their doors. But even in the darkest times, there are bright lights. Today is one of the brightest lights, and let us hope it's a metaphor, an indication of many more bright lights to come. As I've said over and over again, there are 3 words that I think best fit Judge Jackson: brilliant, beloved, belongs. Judge Jackson is in every sense and by all measures a brilliant jurist. She is indeed a brilliant person. By the judge's own telling, she first discovered her calling to the law not in a classroom or by reading a book or by talking to lawyers, but by sitting at the kitchen table next to her dad, filling out her coloring book while her dad poured through case law. Years from now, other parents and other daughters will do the same, and it will be Justice Jackson's opinions that will lay open on the table. The judge's parents, her entire family, should beam with pride that this day has come. At every step of her upbringing and career, Ketanji Brown Jackson ranked among the highest of achievers. And look, we should take a moment to note that Judge Jackson will be the first and only justice with experience as a public defender. We're proud of that, and America is proud of that. It will enhance the court's ability to preserve a basic truth in our country, that all deserve equal justice under the law, from the privileged to the impoverished. In an imperfect world, the judge conquered so many hurdles, and today stands as one of the most experienced individuals ever nominated to the Supreme Court. For this reason, the judge is also beloved by individuals and organizations across the political spectrum. I went through her record carefully, and never did I find one instance of a peer or colleague or associate say one negative word about her. It was incredible. When we go through these records, you often find someone here and there who will badmouth the individual who knew them. Not with just Judge Jackson. And lest we forget, the judge is popular in the minds of the American people. A Gallup poll released after her hearing showed nearly 60% of the public supports her confirmation, 10 points above the historical norm. And there is no question here, the country, by and large, wants the Senate to confirm Judge Jackson. Police chiefs want to confirm Judge Jackson. Conservative and moderate and liberal judges all want us to confirm Judge Jackson. And I thank my colleagues in this chamber who worked in good faith to make sure the Senate can finish its work today. Finally, as I've said many times, the judge belongs on the Supreme Court. By that, I mean something very specific. In our nation's history, 115 individuals have been confirmed by this body to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States. Of those, 108 have been white men. Only 4 have been women. Only 2 have been African American. But Ketanji Brown Jackson will be the first African American woman ever to hold the title of justice. Think about the impact that will have on our democracy. Untold millions of kids will open textbooks and see pictures of Justice Jackson among the highest ranks of our public figures. How many millions of kids in generations past could have benefited from such a role model? How many would-be justices, lawyers, doctors, generals, business people have been lost to history precisely because their history books had few, if any, role models that they could relate to? We certainly have a long way to go on the road to true justice, but by confirming Judge Jackson today, taking a bold step forward towards reaching the full realization of our country's promise. We will make it far more likely that girls across America will feel precisely what Judge Jackson felt herself when she was a kid. Nobody can stop me. I can do this too. I am brilliant too. I belong too. For all these reasons, increasing the diversity of the court has been one of my highest priorities, one of the highest priorities of our Senate Democratic majority, of whom I am so proud. Justice Jackson is the most important example, but we've been working on this for over a year. Of the 58 Senate-confirmed federal judges since we took the majority, 3/4.
We're just listening to Chuck Schumer kind of wrap up his announcements before the vote, the historic vote for the first African-American justice to ascend to the Supreme Court. How does it feel for you as an American at this moment in time? Does it have the impact that you think it deserves?
It's about damn time.
Right?
And but it's also sad to hear some of the rhetoric from the other side, during the hearings, from various Republican senators who tried to turn nothing into something in regards to her record. But I think it's historic. I think it's, and especially, women of color are one of the most overlooked and just unheralded groups of people in this country. So I think representation matters. I think that specific type of representation matters. And I think it's a great day for her to join the court.
It is kind of crazy that it's like 2021 and we are still having to have conversations about race and, historic moments in kind of race equality. It's crazy to me because we look at these images of the civil rights movement and, Martin Luther King Jr. and, the 1950s race riots and 60s and then some calm and then peace and love and like a positive movement of integration and Kennedy and the like, and then things were kind of heading in the right direction, really, until Donald Trump, when suddenly the racists were given this license to kind of go, be set free with their extremist views. And so here we are having this conversation now. It just makes no sense.
Agreed. I feel Donald Trump gave a lot of people a pass to validate and be their worst selves.
Yeah.
Without repercussion. It's like, who cares? That's me. And then it fell by the wayside, the idea of being a kind, compassionate, empathetic human being. So, a real bummer. Yeah. But today's a good day. Today's a good day,
yeah. Despite what Chuck Grassley might have said earlier or Mitch McConnell, they're just like coming out with just making up stuff, propaganda against this poor woman who really has just like been at the top of her game. Like she's just she really, and what Chuck Schumer was saying about having to overcome the extremes of racism in America to get to such high office. And still, at this point, where she is finally about to get confirmed, she's still facing racism by lawmakers.
Yeah. She navigated a system that was essentially stacked against her for a person of color in this country. I talked about it before. There are two Americas, and she has made it to the highest heights.
For the yeas and nays.
Oh, here we go. The vote.
Here we go.
Is there a sufficient second? There is, and certainly appears to be, a sufficient second. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Ms. Baldwin, aye.
So they're voting here from their desks. They don't have to come up and vote.
Mr. Barrasso,
and
no.
This is the final roll call of numbers here.
Mr. Bennett,
there we go.
Mrs. Blackburn.
And what we're expecting is a unanimous vote against from Republicans, bar 3.
Aye. Mr. No, Mr.
Who was the third one?
Murkowski.
That's
Mr.
right.
Booker, aye. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman.
Okay. Hal, we'll let you go. We'll leave this on the screen for a while. I'm going to go as well, but I'll come back tomorrow. And when your show starts, you're going to have a new Supreme Court justice. So that's your pal Hal. He's here next. I'm Anthony. I'll come back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock Pacific. And we'll celebrate the ascension of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court.
Mr. Casey.
You enjoy the
Mr. Cassidy.
You enjoy the vote, and I'll see you on the other side.
Cassidy, no. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons, aye. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Cornyn, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, aye. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Cotton, no. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Kramer, no. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Crapo, no. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz, no. Mr. Daines. Mr. Daines, no. Ms. Duckworth. Ms. Duckworth, aye. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Durbin, aye. Ms. Ernst. Ms. Ernst, no. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Mrs. Fisher. No. Mrs. Fisher, no. Mrs. Gillibrand. Aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Grassley, no.